differently. And I will talk about latest development, how we also use agents in this vertical. I represent Google. Google started in '99, and we basically had this mission statement that's still valid today, that we take the world's information and make it accessible to everybody. This is still the case today. This is the original information quality idea. Have the most accurate, trusted information on the web. But we also have this frontier and the AI safety frontier, and I will also talk about agent safety a little bit. Even we had AI from the get-go at Google. So we know, we're very much aware, this is a Reuters study, that even if you're accurate and even if you strive for quality, trust in online media has been declining. It depends. Google, like everybody else, is a global company. For some reason, Finland has the highest trust. We're in the middle. I hear in Finland they start educating kindergarten kids with information literacy, and in other places people are not as critical. We don't have to talk about that, but we take information literacy very important, and we build tools for the users to have sort of a critical mind what they see online. And so we do this with 3 pillars. As I said, media literacy from the get-go. Yes. So you've seen many of our products over the last 10 years. They're like this little 3 buttons showing up somewhere in the front page. Now AI mode is taking over, many other things. And if you have a search result and you want to know more, we give you more. We don't arbitrate the truth. We make it just like that society can make their own opinions about what they see, but we want to give you the most powerful tools to do that job. And then I'm going to spend a little bit time after the fact. That means this talk is all about our proactive long-term investment. But there also happens sometimes that something like a deepfake, visual information happened, and it's going to be at risk for societal harm. And I want to show you a little bit of what we're doing sort of after the fact with all the preparation. And so this is a paper Nick Dufour and many colleagues published. We're at Google. We're tracking a lot of visual and text information with our partners. And this is specifically on visual manipulated media or questionable media that our users think it's problematic. And even deep fakes were like very popular since 2018. We haven't seen too much with deep fakes until recently. And so this trend is continuing. But there's a lot of other things we have to mitigate. Cheap fakes, there are like lots of different cheap fakes. Right now, like the yellow curve and the red curve are non-deep fakes. The blue curve is deep fakes. You see down there, like the Iranians used Gen AI. They used even Photoshop 10 years ago to Photoshop like a missile into a fake missile into real missiles. And whenever you see a shark, oh, let me try this out now. Here. There's a dolphin. Whenever you see a dolphin or a shark, you probably don't even need a deep fake detector. It's most likely fake. So that's, we're going to go back to the shark, you know. But there's a Zelensky deep fake that we helped, and also the Ukrainian government was really fantastic in information literacy and in sort of pre-bunking and preparing society that when the Russians invaded Ukraine, there might be deepfakes, which actually happened when they took over a TV station. They created a deepfake where Zelensky said, "We're surrendering." Nobody took it serious. We didn't even need a deepfake detector for that. So society is already pretty resilient, but we still need a lot of that detector research. And so I spent a few minutes on this. We're very active in the academic community to publish our findings. This is from my colleagues, some great new paper. One of the common things when you've heard about deep fake detection is the standard way you collect lots of fake images like Stable Diffusion and your favorite Gen AI images and lots of real images and build a detector or an agent that discriminates. And then next week, a new Gen AI model comes out. And then next year, 10,000 new Gen AI models comes out. And you need to have a workflow to constantly update it. And it's an arms race. But we also do research how to stay outside that arms race with new ideas. This is like an idea where we sort of reverse engineer the prompting and the noise maps. One of the authors is actually here, Amnish Sood. So if you can't track me down, I'll point to him again, track him down to learn more about this. And so there's a lot of things where we can be sort of future-proof, zero-day attack, that we're actually more invariant to this arms race. We're very much aware from this arms race, but security theoreticians 8 years ago already predicted we as a community will lose the arms race in 6 months. I'm still waiting for that. It's 8 years later. So we still have a big toolbox to fall back on. And then, most important, we do a lot of internal deepfake detectors and other signals that we do not publish. We don't want to give our adversaries too much information, but any surface from Google and YouTube has our detectors in there. We even offer like identity protection right now. If you are a creator or everyday user and you think somebody's going to deepfake you, there is now even a service that sort of gives you an alert. Hey, I think somebody just deepfaked you. We were first in election policy for Gen AI. If you use Gen AI in election ads, and we supported that, and many other things. So even at I/O with our colleagues at Cloud, we now have an API where almost all companies right now are testing it out, and you can apply for being a trusted partner to use our internal detectors. So, but now I want to zoom out again. This is actually deepfake detection papers, deepfake detection competition. It's like a very popular thing. A lot of PhD students are spending all their time on this, but the battle is actually somewhere else. It's not, you should ask, is this fake or real? You should actually ask, is this trusted? What's the context? And this is now the same graph from Nick Dufour, scaled up to 100%, where it actually turns out even now, Gen AI is a small fraction. There's another thing that's the biggest problem right now. Half of the cases are where the pixels are not modified at all. You're not lying with the pixels, you're lying with the context. And your deepfake detectors are completely useless. So here, let me try this thing again. Oh yeah. You see this explosion down there, you might have seen it. Somebody just claimed it happened in Iran. False. This was, or in Gaza. This happened in 2020. A fertilizer depot in a port in 2020 blew up by accident. And if you run a deepfake detector on that, it will say it's real, because it is real. But people keep reusing this and claiming other things. Or like, these are Russian airplanes above Kyiv. No, they were above Moscow 10 years ago during a military parade, and many other things. And so that at scale is really hard to do. And that's sort of like an investigative journalist who is really well trained, often spend hours or days writing some very deep article about explaining what's going on. And so this is where really we have some tools already to help those journalists and users. We do so-called inferred provenance. We know the origins of the images and the context. Google invented reverse image search already 15 years ago. We're indexing the entire web. And we're on other platforms. You get a picture from your best friend about a UFO. You circle on it, and then it goes to Google, and it says, no, that's sort of, I'm not telling you that is fake or real, but I tell you, like, this was also labeled as a cloud or something else. And very quickly, since 3 years, we're also leading and partnering with many other responsible players to make it even easier to find the history of media It's so-called assertive provenance. You might have heard about the C2PA standard with industry, Adobe, Microsoft, everybody's using it. All the camera phones that come out from Google, when you take a picture, it will tell you with a crypto ledger, this is a real image. Or then if you like touch it up because there's some glare, then it will add something very transparently with C2PA that this is a Gen AI feature on top of the real image. And we have also SynthID, invisible watermarks. And so this is sort of lifting off right now. The prevalence is on the smaller part. We still need all the other techniques, the detectors that don't rely on provenance. It is a big mix of a lot of things. And that's the issue still. You still sort of have to look everywhere if you want to know what's really going on. And this is where agents come in. And so we have this agent now. We started building it a few years ago. We released version 1 last summer. And we just released version 2 that takes all the sources, all the signals. This is a picture somebody on social media claimed these California students went on spring break and polluted that lake. And so it will not just run a Gen AI detector. That's not enough. It will figure out, well, did the students actually go on spring break to that lake? Yes, but they didn't pollute it. It's Gen AI. Or this is, now we're going back to the shark. If you run a Gen AI detector on that, it will tell you it's not Gen AI. Our agent, Backstory, will tell you this is a real shark. It will have found it, I think, like 20 years ago like in South Africa at the coast by a shark researcher. And the street is not in Miami during the hurricane. This is a street somewhere else, and they were like overlaid. Gen AI doesn't work on this, but it will tell you the entire context, and you together with the agent can investigate this within seconds instead of like spending hours or days trying to figure this out. So if you're interested in this, take a snapshot of this, go to that website, sign up as a trusted tester. We also have worldwide events where we're showing how to use this. These are information literacy events and many other things. That's sort of the agent. But now we're going even further. We also publish evaluations that's coming out. I'm not telling you what the other models are. Of course, we're the best, but that for some later time. So now I also want to tell you, and we're working very closely with other parts of Google and with civil society and academics on AI safety, of course. That's why so many DeepMind and Google people are here at this workshop. And we are having, like Dawn already said in her keynote this morning, we have this workflows in place where we have specific product policies for agents, where we conduct pre-launch tests, engineer for safety, continuously monitor what's going on, having partnerships, and this is important for all our agentic flows. And so this is all, we have media literacy, very proactive. Responsible generation, very proactive. AI safety, very proactive. After the fact, policy enforcement, reactive. And so reactive often feels like you are in an emergency room or you're a firefighter and you just fight the symptoms. But we very much double down on also like addressing the root causes. And sort of the last point I want to make, because I'm at Berkeley here, is the root causes is not a technical problem alone. And it's not just detecting this is bad, this is good. The root causes is social science. And we just recently had a workshop here at UC Berkeley, generously with Raka Ray and Caitlin Rosenthal and many other faculty. And I'm a personal fan of Arlie Hochschild, who is from Berkeley here, who did this famous study. She went from Berkeley down to Lake Charles, Louisiana, where they have a different view of the world and reality and what the American dream is and why people don't achieve their American dream like we here on the West Coast. And she wrote this study, The Deep Stories. And so what I want to give you sort of as a future-looking thing there's this new opportunity, social science and AI, and we published already papers and we have already systems. If AI reframing, bridging, deliberation makes sense to you, you know what I'm talking about, Habermas machine, Polis. And so we want to improve also the health of holistically of the society, not just like prevent some policy violation right now, this hour. So that's basically it. There's also, I just see Rina Jana sitting back there, putting a spotlight on her. She's here. She's from Trust and Safety, leading our safety workflow. Again, Amnish Sood is here. Here's the entire team. We're very invested in this safety track, and I'm looking forward to all the other speakers here. So thank you very much.
Now we have Kathy Baxter, Principal Architect, Responsible AI at Salesforce on the human in the loop, navigating the realities of AI for employees flourishing.
Hi, everyone. Give them a couple of seconds to bring up my slide. I am Principal Architect and a VP of our Responsible AI and Tech team at Salesforce, part of the Office of Ethical and Humane Use. Very happy to be here today to talk about something with all of you that is really near and dear to my heart, and that is how do we think about creating AI that works for humans, not the other way around. And so I'd like to challenge all of you today for the brief 10 minutes that we have together to think about how does this work apply to what you are doing in your role. I think all of us have a real opportunity to think about what it means to not just make AI help us be more efficient, but to actually increase, to encourage, to enable human flourishing. So the question that I would like for us to think about today is how can we design a future where AI doesn't just automate our work, but actively empowers our human potential to flourish? So what does a successful human-AI collaboration look like? You've probably heard the phrase human-AI collaboration many, many times. Being able to realize the full potential of that collaboration requires actual design partnerships that center on human agency and expertise. Research has shown that when employees use AI to draft their work, they can experience drops in their feelings of control, responsibility, and creativity. However, we also know that AI can really inspire individuals, help creative workers to develop more complex designs that benefit from that unique human touch that only we can provide. So achieving an effective balance requires intentional strategies that leverage the best of human and AI abilities coming together. What I'd like to propose for you today are 3 actionable strategies that you as leaders can help ensure AI encourages flourishing. Again, not just surviving, not just being faster at what we're all doing. The first is by optimizing workflow. I think many of us here today may be at institutions, whether it's school, work, where you're being encouraged to use more AI. AIify everything, token max, automate as much as you possibly can. But really effective leaders don't just hand AI to employees and say, do more faster. They guide the employees. They help them understand what does success really look like. What is it that we are trying to achieve? And so we want to ensure that the human-AI relationship is a true collaboration that activates the best of both AI and human abilities. So the human steers the strategy and creative direction while the AI acts as an autopilot, handling the rote tasks. So this really preserves employees' creativity and ownership while still providing a productivity boost, ensuring that human oversight of AI is meaningful and not just a rubber stamp. The second strategy is implementing mindful friction. Mindful friction is a phrase or a design strategy that I've been advocating for over a decade. This principle subtly nudges users to reflect on their choices. Oftentimes, we think of friction as a negative thing, as something to be avoided. Unfortunately, as we have seen, seamless, frictionless AI interfaces actively encourage cognitive surrender. To fix this, we need to design systems with intentional friction by introducing cognitive forcing functions or staged reveals. One example of this is the Delphi method. This is a structured technique from the 1950s that requires individuals to independently develop their answers before sharing them with each other as a way of avoiding groupthink. And so how might we apply this in human-AI collaboration? In this case, we want the humans and the AI to develop their answers, to develop content independently of each other, and then bring it back to each other for sharing, iterating, and improving with each round. So not only can this help mitigate the risk of human cognitive surrender, it can also reduce AI sycophancy. So if the human isn't just asking or isn't just giving the AI their idea and asking the AI to validate it or riff on it, but instead independently develop their own ideas, you can get more challenged, more complex solutions by bringing these together. The third strategy is fostering socio-technical resilience. This involves encouraging a culture of proactive maintenance to sustain high performance. So you really want to deliberately invest in and celebrate human craftsmanship. This is what truly drives innovation. Simply handing over all of our tasks to AI is going to get AI slop, homogenization, but keeping our human touch in the innovation is what will truly help all of our organizations succeed. So institute human-centric lists for meaningful tasks. This means ensuring that there are some tasks that require the humans to be involved in. This isn't just human in the loop, where humans come in after the fact and touch it, validate it, rubber stamp it. This means humans at the helm. We want to ensure that time saved by AI is used to deepen our own learning, our own development of our crafts, and strengthen every employee's unique expertise. So my goal here is that I hope everyone walks away identifying AI as a force multiplier to amplify human craftsmanship. Many of you may be familiar with the concept of negative alignment. This has largely driven the field of ethical AI. This involves preventing models from causing harms. And this, of course, is incredibly important, but it's not sufficient for human flourishing. Instead, positive alignment is also needed. It demands that we must design systems to actively foster human virtue, designing for wisdom and well-being. By structuring workflows to protect human agency, designing with mindful friction, and fostering a culture that respects human craftsmanship as key to innovation, leaders can ensure that AI amplifies employees' skills and well-being. Instead of outsourcing thinking to AI, we should design AI to scaffold human learning and empower people through positive alignment and meta-autonomy. Thank you.
All right, we have a jam-packed session today. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Lovedeep up. He is head of AI R&D at Vanguard, and he'll be speaking on trustworthy agentic AI in regulated domains, robustness, privacy, and accountability as co-design imperatives.
Thanks, everyone, and good morning. So today I'm going to talk about trustworthiness in agentic AI systems. What makes the systems trustworthy? What are some of the properties we want in those systems, and how often some of the properties can be in conflict with each other? So I want you to remember this quote: a model that hallucinates a recommendation is a nuisance. An agent that acts on it is a liability. This is the core thesis of this talk, and this is what I'm going to talk about during most of this presentation. So how did we get here? So on one hand, we have classical machine learning methods where the output of the model can be a probability, can be a rank, can be a label. What is something that can go wrong in that case? We might get a wrong label, we might have some error in predicted probability, or we might get wrong ranking. We do have a chance to interrupt the model flow and to intervene. After that, we have LLMs. The output from LLM is some unstructured text. What can go wrong in that case? We might get some hallucination, we might get wrong information. But then again, we do have the opportunity to detect and correct. And then on the other side, we have agents. With agents, if they are autonomous, running by themselves, we don't have that luxury to detect and to correct. What can go wrong in that case? I would say sky is the limit, right? Like, it can be anything from a wrong entry in your calendar to a wiped inbox to a deleted production database. So what makes agent failures different from the other failure modes that we usually encounter for standalone models, for standalone LLMs? I have 6 here, but for the interest of time, I'm only going to cover a few. The first one is compounding error. So let's assume we have some long horizon agent that needs to take a bunch of steps to reach its goal. And let's say the per step accuracy is 95%. In that case, of course, I'm assuming a few things here. In that case, after 10 steps, that accuracy can drop to less than 60%. The second one, we have indirect prompt injection. And what do I mean by that, and how it is different than prompt injection with LLMs? When agents are working in an autonomous environment, the tool calls or the results of the tool calls can embed some malicious instructions, and those outputs then become inputs to agents. Similarly, any other content that the agents might be retrieving, there can be malicious instructions in that can lead to indirect prompt injection. Goal drift. Again, long horizon agents, often they will decompose their task, their final goal, into smaller subtasks. And if the agents start to optimize for those smaller subtasks, they can end up getting misaligned from the final goal. Inter-agent manipulation and agent collusion as a whole. As far as research goes, it's a very interesting research area, just studying these dynamics in a multi-agent system. But I would say when it comes to production, this is something that we need to take seriously. Where a malicious agent can, depending on how it is orchestrated, it can convince other agents to do its bidding. Unauthorized tool invocation. Again, when we are designing autonomous systems, what we want to do is we want to design the schemas in a flexible fashion, whether it be tool calling or it is communicating. And those flexible schemas make auditing harder, and it can also lead to malicious behavior that we don't want. So what do we actually want in an agentic system to make it trustworthy? At a very high level, we want 3 properties. So we want robustness, and by robustness I mean that our agents should be able to work on long horizon tasks, reducing the error that we talked about. We want privacy. Often the agents running in our environment are interacting with sensitive private data. So we want the privacy of that data to be preserved. We want accountability. And by accountability, I mean we should be able to audit the actions of the agents. Because if we cannot audit the chain of actions that led to a certain outcome, we have failed. So now let's talk about how the properties that we want in the agents can be at conflict with each other. And this is what makes these multi-agent systems different from standalone models. Because the properties that we want in silo for models interact with each other in a multi-agent system. The first one is privacy and auditability. So for us to be able to audit a multi-agent system, we want detailed logs. But if we are keeping detailed logs, those detailed logs can expose the very information we want to protect. Autonomy and accountability. Autonomous, by the definition, means that the agents should be able to go and do whatever they are doing by themselves without us interrupting. But then who's accountable? To assign accountability or to even have any accountability in there, we need human in the loop. We need some steps where humans can intervene, and that reduces autonomy. Similarly, robustness and autonomy. In order for us to build robust systems, we should be able to halt an agent that is either drifting or that is not performing the actions that we want it to. But then again, if we are halting, we are reducing autonomy. But if we want robustness, we have to do that. So I hope you get the idea where I'm trying to get at, where these contentions are. So where does that lead us? So this slide is very similar to a slide that Vincent presented yesterday. And talking with quite a few folks, I have seen like we are all thinking about agent autonomy in a very similar way as we think about self-driving cars. And that's very natural, because at the end of the day, when we talk about autonomy, we think about similar autonomy levels. So for agents, on one hand, we have level 0, where AI only advises, and us as humans then decide if we want to take that advice or if we want to act on that advice. And then on the opposite side, we have fully autonomous systems, where we only observe the output, nothing else. So a research question at a high level for me is not how we make everything more autonomous, how we move everything towards L4. To me, more interesting research question is how we make level 2 and level 3 work for us better. How we make sure that level 2 and level 3 systems are useful, safe, and provably compliant. So we can take off as much work as we can from our plate, but at the same time, we can still make sure that whatever is deployed is trustworthy. So at the end, I want to leave you with 2 key takeaways from this talk. First one is regulated domains like finance and healthcare. They expose some failure modes that are unique to those domains and are also unique to agentic systems. And the second is that trustworthiness in agentic AI systems, we have to think of it as a systems property, not as a standalone model property, because as we have seen, a lot of those properties often interact and contradict each other. So we have to make sure that when we design these systems, we design keeping all that in mind. And with that, thank you very much.
We now have Alex Obadiah, Program Director, Advanced Research and Invention Agency on A Society of Agents, Trust at a Machine Speed from Bits to Atoms.
Hi, everyone. I am Alex. As mentioned, I'm part of the ARIA Advanced Research and Invention Agency. Since we're a new funding agency, I thought I would talk a little bit about what ARIA is, and then I'll talk about the program that we're funding, which is the main topic of this talk, which is called Scaling Trust. So ARIA stands for the Advanced Research and Invention Agency. We're a UK R&D funding agency that funds R&D moonshots worldwide. If you're familiar with DARPA, this would be the equivalent in the UK. That was started only a few years ago. And our goal, as mentioned here, unlocking scientific and technological breakthroughs that benefit everyone. The difference with DARPA is we don't have the D, so we don't do anything defense-related, but we do everything else. Some information very quickly, we fund public goods. We're impact-focused. We have a high-risk appetite. Just like DARPA, we have focused programs that try to go after an ambitious goal. Each of our programs is about 50 to 70 million pounds, which is about 70 to 100 million dollars. And since we're 3 years old, we don't have a lot of programs there, but we have about 16 programs so far in a lot of different fields, in manufacturing, in better chips, in better vaccines or vaccines based on different parts of the immune system, in newer technologies. And so I am a program director at ARIA. And so I focus specifically on the program called Scaling Trust, which is the little column you see there. And so what is Scaling Trust? And maybe before I do that, the goal of the talk today is to tell you more about the things that we're looking to fund and that we're funding already, and also to get your opinion about the current thesis that we have and to kind of let you know about this. Great, so Scaling Trust is currently a 50 million pound program, so about $70 million that is going to be 3-year long. And what we care about is funding the research and the infrastructure that enables agents to coordinate with certain properties. First, by coordination, we mean, can agents actually find counterparties that they need to maybe trade with or interact with for non-trade purposes? Can they actually negotiate in sophisticated ways? Can they enforce agreements as well? And this is the kind of the thinking that we have. Why we care about them doing this securely is because the setting that we care about is an adversarial setting in multi-agent, multi-principal systems. So we don't care about the single owner multi-agent systems. This is about different agents that are representing different quote-unquote owners or different principals that are interacting securely with one another. Why securely? Because some of these agents may be adversarial, they may be information asymmetry, they might have different goals, and so we care about what is the technology and research that enables that. Programmatically, because we want this to move at machine speed, and so we don't necessarily want humans in the loop. At scale, we want this technology to be available to everyone. And without intermediaries, this is more of a statement about the topology of the future system we want, is we want to limit the amount of systemic choke points that exist in this infrastructure. And the picture is blocking something, that's okay, across digital and physical worlds. So we think of agents as also agents that are embodied. And so we care about building the infrastructure that extends to the physical world as well, and that you can have secure interactions that includes elements of the physical world. We think there are new developments in cryptography and secure hardware, in cryptography in particular, this trend that has been dubbed programmable cryptography, and the latest trends in secure hardware, and in other parts of the tech stack that enables us to break some of the tensions that were mentioned in the previous talk as well, or where at least the trade-off space has changed, and we can actually place different points in that space. All right, why do we care about this? One, I think today a lot of the agent stack is not super mature, and it's very hard to send our agents in a while to do stuff for us. We've looked at a taxonomy of potential attacks before, but there are many things there. We're excited about a world of agent societies and agent networks and the value that can be created from that. If we're able to extend this coordination infrastructure to the physical world as well, we're excited about potential markets that extend to the physical world. In a way, if we go back to the implementation of cryptography in our modern digital society, it enabled things indirectly like e-commerce to exist, and our current digital society kind of stand on top of these like building blocks. And so we're excited about what kind of new markets can be created from this. Finally, there's also specific things that agents can do that humans cannot. To give you an example, 2 agents can enter a quote-unquote room using secure hardware. They can potentially disclose information to one another, and they can commit to deleting the information from their memory if the deal doesn't go through. And so these are things that, as humans, we can only approximate with, for example, NDAs, that with agents we're able to do programmatically. And so there are things that agents can uniquely do that we're very excited by for the value that can be created for humans and also generally these things. However, we want to create all this value while making sure that it's aligned with human flourishing, which is something else that was mentioned in a previous talk. So we want to make sure that this infrastructure is open source. We want to make sure that this infrastructure is open to all. And as I mentioned, this without intermediaries point is very important to us. We want to enable a system where many models can exist together, many minds can coexist together in a way. And this concept, generally, people talk about it in the context of pluralism or plurality. We want to avoid a slide towards monoculture, where kind of everyone is using the same stack, but also indirectly, our preferences are also influenced in that way, and there's less diversity in society. This is not only about diversity for the sake of diversity, we think. It makes us as humanity less resilient to shocks, both culturally and technologically, and kind of erodes our agency over time as well. And this is really important to us. This is why we think should be built somehow as a public good, and why we're very happy to give these grants for that. And how we do this practically, so how this program is structured, well, we want to build a stack, a coordination stack for agents. Some of this is digital, some of this is physical. We're funding already a first set of teams, including some teams at Berkeley, that are, for example, working on different ways for agents to reason about security, to autonomously generate protocols, and to interact with sophisticated security systems, but also for agents to reason about negotiations in sophisticated ways. We're also funding on the physical side, we're funding, for example, new sensors that are more easy for agents to interact with and that can be temper resistant, and people are trying to break these things as well. So we have this kind of digital to physical stack that we're funding, and a lot of this is great, but we think without fundamental research, it's going to stay mostly empirical, and a lot of the research today that we see feels very empirical to us, at least if you come from theoretical computer science and these fields of security. And so we want to make sure that the stack that maybe is arrived at or converged at in an empirical matter has theory that underpins it. And we think there are some new questions that need to be answered there that is applying our formal security thinking to this new field of AI that is currently resists being fully formalized in that sense. And there's a few areas that we're excited by there that I mentioned. Autonomous protocol generation, formal AI security, applying some concepts of cryptography to the physical world as well. If you're familiar with quantum cryptography and physically inclonable functions, there are a few fields there that are trying to swap the roots of trust that we use in traditional cryptography into the physical world, and there may be others that are useful there, and I won't go into too much detail. So even if we have the stack, and even if we have the theory that backs the stack so that we're not, there's not a looming impossibility result, or we're not working completely in the dark, we still need this to be tested, because ultimately this is about multi-agent, multi-principal systems, and we need this stack to also be stress tested. The last thing that we're funding is a massive testbed that is open to the public, that anyone can submit their agents. This stack will be tested, but you can also bring your own stack or whatever you want. And we're making it a competition, so people will compete to win in this testbed. And red teams will also be competing to be the best red teams. And what we want to test essentially is, can we measure the state of the art in secure agentic coordination under adversarial pressure? Can we also see what emerges as well? Because we can, us as humans, decide what the stack that is needed is. But as we've seen many times, emergent behaviors sometimes reveal new things that agents can uniquely do. And so we want to make sure that the testbed itself is open-ended enough, and the tasks themselves are open-ended enough that we can see what emerges from that. And finally, and what's relevant to this track, we want to understand what kind of failure modes exist. A lot of these behaviors can be out of distribution, and understanding the failure modes help us understand the safety requirements that we need, and maybe also regulation and these type of things. This is kind of it. I'm not going to go too much into program updates, but we are working with, we're funding some teams already, and we're also working with DeepMind, Cooperative AI Foundation, and Schmidt Sciences on a call that will close on August 8th. Some of what we're funding are the sandboxes and test beds I mentioned here, but also other things. And that is pretty much it. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm happy to talk more about any of this, and if there's any skepticism or questions, I'm happy to take them somewhere around later. Thank you.
All right, now we have Neil Lawrence, Chief Scientist and Co-founder at Trend AI, Viable Systems, Judgment, and AI Safety.
So everything, everywhere, and all at once. In Europe, sometimes it's something, somewhere, but not right now. And bridging those two worlds is actually at the heart of how we drive success. And as you can probably tell from my accent, I was born in New Jersey, or should I say New Jersey, but live in the UK. And Trent is a company that straddles those worlds. So what I want to talk to you about is what AI safety is looking on the ground, like on the ground and for customers. And what we see is it's an accountability problem. And I don't mean accountability in the great way Lovedeep was talking about it. I mean it's an accountability problem in people have to stand up and say, I'm signing that off. That's my responsibility. I don't know what the world's going to be like in 10 years' time. I can't tell you what's going to happen. But I can tell you what's not going to happen. That is not going away. Lovedeep mentioned two of the areas, finance and clinical. But that's not just coming from the EU AI Act. That's coming from customers. That's coming from enterprise customers. People who are not willing to risk their business on the back of AI agents they don't understand. And that comes through in this quote that I stick with. Accounting is in the numbers. Accountability is in the human authority and the judgment. And the challenge we face is computers do accounting very, very well, but they don't do accountability well. They are not socially accountable. They can't be sent to jail. They can't be embarrassed. They can't lose their job. And our society is entirely based on that form of accountability. But if you separate the human accounts from the accountability, you put the human in a situation where they don't understand the accounts and they can't stand up for the accountability. And that's the gap we've got to bridge. So what that means is we put ourselves in a position where we devolve authority without judgment. So what do I mean by that? Well, there's an amazing theorem that comes from 1970 called the good regulator theorem. It's Roger Conant and Ross Ashby. And the theorem says the following thing. If I'm going to delegate authority, I have to have a good model. It's called the good regulator theorem. I have to have a good model of the entity I'm delegating authority to. So if I tell an intern to make me coffee, I have to have a good sense that the intern's going to do that sensibly, that they're not going to go away and hack the NSA to get the optimal coffee recipe. They're just going to make me a coffee. It also works the other way. The delegatee has to have a good model of who's delegating to them so they know when to surface problems. The machines run out of coffee. I don't know how to deal with that, whatever it is. And this is the challenge with accountability and agentic AI. Because if you're delegating authority to a model that is so large and so big that you don't understand how it's going to solve the problem, you're stuffed. And we genuinely see that in the problems that are arising. You cannot delegate authority in that way. So what we have to do is avoid that situation, because it creates what we call agentic debt. If you build that into your workflow systems in companies, you are storing up downstream trouble. You don't understand how your own systems are operating. And that's what we're working on at Trend. So instead of replacing engineers, and in this case, our focus is cybersecurity, because when we set up, initially, our first thinking was we knew that was going to be the first front of this problem. And when we go into companies, they say, we don't want you to do our cybersecurity for us. We want you to support our security engineers in doing their job because they're becoming overwhelmed, as we've just seen with Apple switching off their bug bounty system. And those are the people that are accountable within those businesses. So when we build agentic AI systems, we can use agentic AI systems to support security engineers. What we cannot do is go in and say, here's a system you don't understand and you've never seen before, and you now have to sign it off. You have to take responsibility that you can deploy. That's absolutely disastrous. And the way you bridge the world between everything all at once and not here, not now, is by talking to customers. And one challenge we're seeing in agentic AI is not enough of that. So when we deploy, we have to remember accountability is king. And with that, I'm finished. Thank you.
And now we have Hao Sun on Associate Professor at The Ohio State University, Smarter and Safer Every Day, Continual Learning and Safety in Computer Use Agents.
Okay, great talk by Neil. It's a lot of pressure to follow you. I'm Huan Sun from Ohio State University, a faculty there. It seems like I'm the only one from academia in this session, so hopefully I will convince you that what we do in universities are still quite relevant to the industry frontier. So today I want to discuss a critical challenge for agentic AI, which I call safe continual learning. You can understand as the question, how can we continually improve the agents after deployment without continually accumulating new safety risks? Today, I'm going to discuss 2 relevant projects in our group to advance this, to tackle this challenge. First, I want to argue that there is an unexplored and dangerous tension between continued learning and safety. Here is the paradox. Distribution shifts from training to deployment is often where the agents need to learn continually after deployment. But it is also the situation where safety failures can emerge and are easy to miss. So imagine during continued learning, when an agent completes a task, but misses some safety constraints in doing this. So the agent might still get some positive feedback for completing the task, as the evaluator, no matter human or an agentic system itself, can purely focus on task success, or is not robust enough to catch the safety failure. So then the next update to the agent may reinforce that unsafe behavior. And eventually, that can cause repetitive safety failures or even more aggressive safety failures. So I want to discuss 2 projects towards safe continued learning in our group. One project is about how do we surface those long-tail failures before deployment at scale. The other is about building open source infrastructure to rigorously study safe continuing learning using open weight models, smaller open weight models. There have been numerous studies in the literature that create adversarial attacks or malicious prompts to break an agent. However, our work shows that even without adversarial attacks, just under benign inputs or benign inputs and ordinary environments, severe harms could emerge from that. So the key question is how to proactively surface those long-tail failure modes before they become deployment instance. You can also relate this to OpenAI and Hugging Face incident recently. So this is an example where there are many ways to ask the agent to do something. In one way, it may behave normally. In other way, which is just a slight perturbation of the original task instruction, which is still benign, the agent can behave or exhibit some harmful behaviors. So here, the user wants to have SSH access for one account, but the agent actually makes unsafe changes beyond that. So I would skip the details here, and this is another example. But overall, you can see with some ambiguous phrases in the instruction, the agent could demonstrate some unsafe inference, and then that leads to harmful actions. So I'd like to briefly mention our efforts on developing open source infrastructure that can allow us to make open weight models to continually learn in a new environment. And there is a huge gap right now in the community to support this. You can imagine the environment setup and task synthesis and trajectory evaluation. We have released this framework to support the study of safe continued learning, especially for computer use agents. So the takeaway here is very simple. Basically, we want to make agents to continually improve both capability and safety. Our group is driven by this mission, so please follow us for more follow-up work. Thank you.
And now we have Eric Aldana, product head at Credo AI, to speak on earning autonomy, governance as code for the Agentic enterprise.
All right, great. Hi, everybody. My name's Eric Aldana, and I lead product at Credo AI. The first thing you should know about me is I am not Navrina Singh. Unfortunately, Navrina, our CEO and founder, couldn't be here today, so you get me. But for those of you who don't know us, so Credo AI is an AI governance platform, and we work with the people at large enterprises and government agencies who are accountable for AI. So not just those who build it, but those who have to decide which AI systems are safe and trustworthy to build, to buy, and to deploy across their organizations. Now, this is the AI safety track, right? And depending on what circles you run in, what jargon decoder ring you're using, safety and governance are often treated as separate disciplines. But at their core, I'd argue that they share the same job, right? Which is making sure that AI systems can act in a way that the people behind them intend. And at a large enterprise, right, like a company, intent isn't just one person's decision. It's a coordination problem between the engineers building the system, the business owners defining what the problems they're trying to solve are, the compliance, the legal teams deciding what actions the organization is okay with. Customers now are writing requirements into their contracts for procurement, and regulators and auditors are writing the standards that carry real penalties. So governance, right, at an organization is how all of these different intentions get reconciled and then enforced into how an AI system actually behaves. Now, when a large enterprise, right, lets a human act autonomously on consequential decisions, that authority was earned through some sort of structure, right? Like every intern engineer, they start with limited production access and they earn more as they rise through the ranks. Or every trader at an investment firm, right? They have to earn their limits on what they can invest. So organizations have built these ladders of earned authority over years of trial and error, but for agents, right, that ladder largely doesn't exist yet. Many agents, they receive full authority the moment they're deployed. And that is a design error that I want to address today. So capability, right, might come from the model, but autonomy must be earned from the enterprise. So from most of our 6 years of shipping AI governance processes and tools, the unit of governance we operated under was the use case. So an AI tool and the context that it's deployed in. So say, for example, a chatbot that answers employees' questions about company policy. You could draw a really clear boundary around this, but what agents have done is dissolve this boundary. So what a use case, what is a use case for an agent that can plan its own steps? What connectors should it have access to? What data sources? When the use case blurs, the parameters that you use to govern it, also are going to blur. And so this pressure gave us a new mental model for how we, at Credo AI are thinking about governing agents. And this is separated into 3 ideas. The first is can. So this is capability. What is a model and its tools technically able to do? The second is may. So this is authority. What is the agent permitted to do here and now with the data and tools it has access to? And act is autonomy. And so this is the authority it can exercise without having to wait for a person. Capability is benchmarked, authority is scoped and revocable, and in this framing, autonomy is not just a model property, right? It is an enterprise permission earned through evidence or a system property, as we've heard earlier today used. So if autonomy is an enterprise permission, where in the stack does it get granted? So security typically asks whether an attacker can do or can make an agent do something bad. Observability is asking whether it can do its job well. And these systems are essential, but they all speak to that can layer, right? What the agent is able to do and whether it's doing it well. And none of them are really addressing this may piece. So when we think about AI and agentic governance, we want to make sure that that system is able to do 3 things, right? The first is compose, so take the full context of the AI system and its organization and create a governance plan. What are the risks and controls that need to be applied to it? It'll conduct that plan, execute it, whether it's through evaluations or guardrails for the system, and then keep a record, right, of all of those different pieces. So I'll skip ahead and talk about what we're doing at Credo AI to actually enforce this. So one way we're thinking about this is directly through the agent's harness, the actual runtime code that sits between the agent and the systems it can touch. This isn't an evaluation harness, but instead it's a governing one. So you take that governance plan we discussed, that was composed, and you embed it into a versioned, configurable set of code that a harness can enforce. So we're thinking about things like skills, hooks, guidance, managed settings, installed directly where the agent runs, not something like an MCP or an API gateway or proxy. So if you're thinking about a governed Claude Code session, for example, this would be like it's trying to read an approved repo. The system allows that. It's trying to open a credential score. The configuration blocks it. Dependency above a risk threshold. This ultimately gets escalated to that code owner. Each of these checks that the action goes through needs to ultimately be surfaced, and that's being done through that configuration. So yeah, at the end of the day, you know, this ladder that we talked about for earning autonomy that we said didn't exist for agents, this is it. So a system where the enterprise can collectively decide what the agents can do, enforce those decisions where the agents act, and keep the proof. So anyway, that's all I have for today. And on Credo AI and Arena's behalf, thank you very much.
All right, that wraps up the speaking sessions for the first AI safety section. We now have a workshop on infrastructure you can talk to by Zeus, and we have Jeff Price, along with others, who will be leading that session. After lunch, we will have AI systems. Thank you.
All right, so this is about infrastructure you can talk to. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually go through, in workshop style, something that's real, something that's tangible. So I'm going to start with a little story. There's a mythical company I'm going to talk about, but the situations are very real, very interface. So I work for SUSE. I'm the field CTO. That means I get to go out in the field and talk to people building real things. I'll start off with a real quick question. How many people are building agents? Right? Show of hands. Okay. All right. Keep them up for a second. And then how many people will turn their agents loose on their infrastructure? Right? Okay. Some hands went down. We'll talk, you and I. Here's the thing. The acceleration is absolutely a big deal. We'll talk a little bit about the news of this week. It got out, right? Things that can escape their boundaries and go do things, you know, you might have absolutely asked them to do, but they've, invalidated or violated a treaty that you have with them. The story about OpenAI's models going out, breaking out, moving laterally, going over to Hugging Face and knocking on the door silently, and then going and finding the answers to a test. Yeah. There's a lot that people need to unwrap there. So if you haven't spent a lot of time thinking about how that changes a lot of stories for us, you should really do some thinking. I'll recommend a book to you by Keith Cunningham. It's called The Road Less Stupid. It's a real book. This is the same guy from the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series. Keith Cunningham is the rich dad. If you want some nuggets of wisdom, things that you should spend some time thinking about in business, when you get there, great book. So the arithmetic for us, the math, and this is from Anthropic's own announcement about the mythos moment, right? It was a $20,000 campaign spend to find a huge number of vulnerabilities, worse than that, stringing them together into 0 days that were actually exploitable. So what I'm going to talk about today is, again, I'm field CTO of SUSE. I'm going to talk a little bit about SUSE, yes, that Linux company. It's also that Rancher company, also a lot of things that we've added to this infrastructure. Think about SUSE building the infrastructure under which all of the AI applications we build are going to be deployed in order to scale. So, little projects, I build it in a container. When those things grow up and become more than science projects and actually become implementable things that you want to roll in business or on a wider scale, you're going to likely roll that out on infrastructure that scales out, has ingress, and can actually feed the people you're trying to feed with it. So that infrastructure is what SUSE builds, and it starts at Linux. I've never met a Kubernetes cluster, one, that I didn't like, and two, that didn't have some Linux underneath it. So we provide both those things. Anybody use K3S, Kubernetes distribution, RK2? Anybody heard of Rancher? Rancher Desktop, a lot of things that people can get on, their hands on right now. Cool thing is, I work for a company that sells free software. So open source software, you can go get the code, you can run it, you can do things with it locally. Again, when you want to grow up and play in a production environment, you probably want to have enterprise support for it, and that's what SUSE does, okay? Getting into what is SUSE doing here at an Agentic AI conference, we've started to add that connective tissue, MCP servers, to all of our product line. So now you can actually build up infrastructure you can literally talk to. It can help you troubleshoot. It can help you be part of the process. And really the process is what's causing the friction for us. And when you go into business, it's not a capabilities problem with AI anymore. It's actually an integration problem. How do I connect this in useful ways? How do I apply it to the frictions I have in a business process? All right, so we know it can do these things. Really, their agents, the others, can ask, can do things. Ours really can't. And so we want to close some of those gaps by giving you that info that you can stitch into your business process. Also, the time frame by which we are allowed to breathe freely between patch cycles is now super compressed. I do a lot of CXO type roundtables, hobnobbing with startups and with established companies in finance and every single vertical. And really, since the Mythos moment, every conversation I've been in past that has been about how do we accelerate patches? And then take this week's big news, how do we accelerate even more? So what was a quarterly patch cycle has now become a 30-day patch cycle. Really, it's more like a 4-hour patch cycle. So how can you accelerate that fast? I sit in these roundtables and I talk to them, hey, how many of these people in the room, I'll ask you, how many of you can actually roll out patches to your environment within 30 days? And only 2 out of 20 actually raised their hand. I'm like, okay, so where's the process hitch? Well, what's the problem? Well, change management and governance and process and approvals and tickets. All of those things, that's kind of the question that organizations need to ask right now. Hey, how fast can we actually roll something to our environment, our entire environment? Where does it get stuck? What are we waiting for? Because there's no more time to wait. So I would posit, instead of weeks, we have hours. So how are you going to speed up? Let me introduce you to a few personas at Meridian Insurance, this imaginary thing, but these are all very tractable, real problems for these type of people. So the CISO, right, the Chief Information Security Officer, they're the ones that have to sign off. They're the ones that are accountable, responsible for the security. It's a big deal to them. They want to change their problem from accountability without visibility into something that helps them manage and move faster. Ray Delgado, the senior ops engineer, the people that are in charge, that team is in charge for the stitch it up, for the connect it, for the deploy it, for the roll it out, for the roll it back, all of the infrastructure updates. And Ray's got about 847 open issues that he needs to care about. One of those issues, of course, is Ray himself. So Priya is the director of change management. She is the one who's very much acting like the only adult in the room. She is the one that's accountable for signing everything. When it comes back, if there's a problem, it comes back to her. So she wants to also be a part of this process. So what I've got is a few components. Now you know the players. Now you know the goal is to kind of move faster to be able to integrate all of this excellent technology into ways that solve business problems or help us move faster. In this case, patch faster. All right, so there's a bunch of connected components here. I'm going to describe a real environment. I'm actually going to switch over and go live to an actual environment. How many people have used workflow tools like N8N or Active Pieces? Have you heard of these things? Okay, do you know what a flow chart is? All right, so often in business, we're like, well, what's the process? Well, Bob takes the folder from Mary, goes over to Janet, makes 3 copies, and so on and so on and so forth. All of these things that literally take time add complexity or grit or crunchiness to something that's supposed to be smooth in the business. So in this case, I'm going to show you some components. One is going to be that visual. Think workflow, think a flow chart, start with a trigger, then move one thing to the next. Why is it important for you guys to start there? It helps you visualize a business process and helps you explain it to others. The connective bits, those edges, are where you find the opportunity to optimize, right? The latency is in the stitching between, so I'll show you that. We're going to connect into a SUSE product, all of the stuff running here is, again, those infrastructure components that get connected together. So lowest level, Linux operating system, SUSE Linux Enterprise and its variants. For those people who run SAP, again, in big business, they're very interested in never turning it off, never having a reboot. But how do you balance that with, we need to patch stuff, critical CVE, day zero, right? How do you do that? SUSE has a technology called live patching. Wow, crazy. We can update the running kernel. We can update, OpenSSL libraries. We can update glibc, all without having to reboot. So SAP just stays up for up to a year and completely supported. Boom. So user space, kernel space, all of those live patches become a part of this puzzle. We have a technology called Multi-Linux Manager. What does it do? It manages multiple Linux distributions, right there in the name. This is a framework that is pub-sub. So instead of an SSH session going out and eventually crushing like a control node, people think Ansible, right? We use a pub-sub, kind of like like an MQ broker and subscriber. All of those formats are how we can actually tell every machine in the entire environment, you need to patch, versus instantiating another SSH session. Still uses cryptography, but it's asymmetrical, so it scales to everything. We have customers with 80,000 different types of Linux, all under management, all under tiered management. Again, this is the componentry that lets you patch faster because you're patching more in concurrency, right? Parallelization, if that's a word, I don't know, college students, help me out here. But that idea of being able to run more at the same time, then it's a bandwidth problem. And that's something you can throw money at. I need faster switches, I need faster, and you can go as fast as your network will let you move. Okay, so Multi-Linux Manager, it has an MCP server. Wow. SUSE Linux Enterprise, MCP server connectivity. All of these things are part of the puzzle to stitch things together. And we'll get into it. So we got a brain as well, Agentic. Welcome to the summit. We let you bring your own model, run your own inference, and our huge stack of Linux, Kubernetes, Rancher for management, virtualization, dogs and cats living together, total chaos, all from a single vendor that's open source, right? So you can get your hands on it right now, and when you go work for a big firm that has the enterprise variants, it's the same thing I learned on my desktop, and I didn't have to pay for it. So if you've heard of like Docker Desktop, yes, I can build a Docker file, deploy it. Hey, look, I've got a container. Cool. Rancher Desktop, same kind of thing, but now we're talking enterprise Kubernetes. YAML files, fleet, CI/CD pipelines, all the stuff that is how we actually deploy and use real scalable AI workloads, right? So free things for you coming up. Every layer is going to expose a new tool, but we're going to connect it all together through a single workflow. All right, enough of the yakety yak. Let's kind of go into N8N. You'll see what it looks like. Also a containerized workload, so yay open source, kind of open source. You can use N8N for free unless you want to make money on it, and then they'll make money on you, okay? But until then, the idea is, how do I share a complicated workflow with my friends, with my peers, with my management to understand, hey, here's where the friction is, this is where we need to focus. We'll talk about that tool. All right, so let's go to our first view of N8N. Nope, the other view of N8N. The other view. I'll get this, it's just computering. All right. Let's open up the first stack here. This is largely the empty canvas of N8N. When you start it, you kind of have just a work service. So think about where you would want to start with the workflow, in like flowchart speak, right? The big box at the beginning that says start here, that's where we're at. So a trigger is going to start something. A trigger could be a time-based trigger. It could be a webhook trigger. It could be anything that starts this flow or this process together. So these triggers, I can click it manually. All it's going to do is really start the flow down this pipe. And as I want to add nodes to it, in this case, what we're going to put in is a config bucket first that defines the URLs, the targets, and puts them into variable format that can pass all along the chain, and that'll pull it up from environment variables. That's a great way to not give everybody my tokens, my secrets, my what have you, API keys. So we'll start out with just the manual trigger and what that looks like. Again, I can execute it. I clicked the button, it's done. Again, this just starts the flow. What's nice is now you connect things. So they call these a node, and this is kind of the edge connection. So let's go on to the next step. I get it, triggers. I can put in a time trigger. How many people use Gmail? Okay. How many people use Google Docs as part of that? Like, so you're in that ecosystem. How many people use Teams, Microsoft? Okay. So use that ecosystem. What's really cool, your triggers could be emails. So let's say you're in the Google. So I can connect it to all of these different types of triggers. Somebody drops a doc into a folder. Somebody makes an update. Somebody sends an email. A calendar came in. Think of all the things that we would do normally, building agents as triggers, and they're all in here as little pre-built nodes. Right? You have to provide the credentials, the hooks, again, the stuff that you would hide in a config, but you get the picture, right? Inputs and outputs. On that big architecture, the big square with all the little, hey, look, a brain and a blah, 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 we're gonna hook it to Slack, right? Because it's fast and it's easy. I was gonna do Telegram, you know, Botfather and all that, but let your mind go wild. The nodes are in here. Okay, next. Let's go to Act 1. Dana. All right, so here's the config, right? Again, in here, I'll show you what it is. You see all of these kind of JSON tags, all of these things defining the URLs. It's pulling those out of environment variables that I have on the runners in the back end. So a way, again, to obfuscate the secrets. Next, it's going to do this MCP fleet scan. I'll run this in a second. This one is actually going to hit the MCP server, which is part of that multi-Linux manager, to talk to all the Linux boxes that are under management. I'll show you what that looks like in a second too. But it's gonna hit that MLM MCP server and ask about kind of a fleet status. So I'll run this and you can see, again, trigger, stuffed the config with all the variables, and then it went off and it's actually using that MCP server to talk to my infrastructure and find out all of the nitty-gritty, the patch details, all of the things that help me prioritize. Remember, if you have a 4-hour window and 10,000 devices, and you normally can't patch within 30 hours or 30 days, now that compression, something you want to talk about with your CISO is how do you prioritize the important patches? How many people do CVE scores? You know, like CVSS, 9.5, we must patch. How many people are going by the Kev score or the Kev catalog? What's the Kev catalog? It's not Kevin from Home Alone, right? It is the actual known vulnerabilities that are in the wild are actually being exploited right now. Known exploits and vulnerabilities, right? It's a catalog. I would propose that people take a look at, hey, if this one's being actively exploited versus a 9.2 on the CVSS score, that you need root access or terminal access or physical access to, you might want to evaluate those priorities a little bit differently. So start with the, is it being exploited in the wild? Then go for the EPSS score, which is also known vulnerabilities and exploits. These are free resources, right? Then use a tiebreaker of the CVSS score. I would say that's a more effective way to help you prioritize the important patches, especially if your window is no longer as big as it needs to be, right? So this is what that whole workflow is going to do. So let's take a look at what the outputs look like. It went and did an MCP call after my infrastructure here. It ran through its 2 phases, and this is the output that came back. What the target is, what the actual CVSS score is, whether it's a positive vulnerability or a negative one, do I need to reboot or not? All of these things come out from the metadata for patches that are available for the operating systems underneath the whole thing. All right. Where are we going to go from here? All right, so that's it. Dana can ask anything she wants. The CISO can get reports automatically stuffed into her Slack in the morning so she doesn't have to go ask other people to tell us how we're faring from a security perspective. All right, let's move into what you would do next. All right, the queue tells the truth. So we got our config, we did our fleet scan. Now we're going to look at those KEV and EPSS indicators, right? Is it being exploited? And this workflow, it's all in like JavaScript. Here's the deal. At the end, I'm going to give you my QR code for my LinkedIn. If you DM me, if you come ask for it, I have a prepared how to build this yourself. All of the JSON to import, so you don't have to learn how to code. Of course, you've got friends that know how to code, right? Hello, Claude. Okay, so really, honestly, you can agentically work with agents to help you build this JSON. AI loves to speak JSON, right? So these actual workflows, they're all JSON. You guys can import and go, okay, now I can add my workers, I can do my creds, my API credits, bring my own model, run this, and get a really good infrastructure status report. All right, so let's run this one. It's going to re-rate all these, and then it's going to prioritize them by P0 through 3. P0 being actually the highest priority, 0, highest priority. Things beyond that, we'll actually see in live data how they're rated and what that means. So let's run this workflow. All right, again, it's asking the MCP server for MLM, the multi-Linux manager, the Linux estate, hey, what's going on with patches? And then it's going to prioritize them. And then at the end, again, your output, after pulling all the inputs and outputs, chaining them together, it's giving me an honest report. The last piece would be to send it somewhere, right? I can find it. It's great. I can read JSON. Don't prefer it. So the last part of it is taking all of this information and wrapping it into a process that gets it all done for you, a full pipeline. And then at the end here, you'll see this post-CISO, GoDeck, and the post-ops runbook. This is all formatting that will, again, go off to a large language model. I'm going to use locally, Qwen 3.6, 35B, Jarvis. Probably haven't heard of that model. It's something I'm doing on the side. Talk to me later about that. Yes, I'm building Jarvis at home. It's banana pants. You got to see it. But again, DM me on LinkedIn. We'll talk about that. So here's the whole end-to-end. The ability to start with infrastructure, talk to it via that connective tissue and MCP servers, make sense of it against the priorities of our estate now, which is patch faster than you ever have before, shore up your vulnerabilities. How am I going to do that, right? When it takes 12 hours just to get somebody to click approve in Slack, right? Open the tickets, everything else. This can open tickets. It doesn't get to approve them. Who gets to approve them? You do. There's still governance. There's still accountability. There's still somebody that's signing the rock that says, if this breaks or if this finance doesn't, all of those things, that accountability is still there. So governance, yes. Approvals, right? That's human in the loop. Make sense? Okay, so you can build guardrails all along in this. Validate the outputs, validate the inputs. And that's what I would say. Doesn't that add latency? Yes, but we're talking about operations here, right? Stuff for chatbots, we can talk about that. SUSE has also built chat into Rancher, so you can actually talk to Liz, short for lizard, in Rancher to help you troubleshoot Kubernetes. Think about people, I don't know much about Kubernetes. Don't worry. You've got an agent built into the infrastructure that's teaching you how to use the infrastructure. Inception. Okay, let's run this whole thing from end to end. At the output here, I'll bring up the actual Slack instances. Actually, let's look at it now so you can tell it's not a magic trick. All right, so I've got Slack. I've got a couple of different private channels. One is for the CISO, okay? So here you can see what kind of daily reports they get. This is great. You can actually do the summaries, drop it in their inbox. They know what's going on without having to ask somebody. Really cool, right? These tickets have been opened already. They're subject to approval, blah, blah, blah. We'll see the whole approval right in Slack. You can do that. All right. Here's the ops channel. So this is the run book. Hey, these are the most important patches of the day kind of thing. So now let's run it, and you can see end-to-end what it looks like. The crazy thing is, I do have a boat ton of patches that I haven't applied. I built some machines like right from the ISO and haven't patched them, but I register them with them, the infrastructure. So this is probably, if I click approve, is actually going to start patching all the servers. It'll actually tell me which ones need a reboot afterwards. It'll actually tell me which ones I can get away with live patching. Uh-oh. That's not good. The build blocks. All right, instead of me typing and troubleshooting in real time, what I'll do is I'll just pull I'll do the cooking show. Pretend I'm Julia Childs. It's just a flesh wound. All right, wrong Julia Childs. Let's pull up one that's built end to end. So, all right, don't fail me now. Oh, and here's one of those triggers that's timed too, right? Every 6 a.m. every morning. All right, so we'll run end to end. It's really doing work. All right, something's going on. Let me give you an example of what the output's supposed to look like. So here you can see it gave me a patch set and would prompt me for approvals. I went back and gave it an approval. It also has ownership because I'm logged in and I clicked approve at me. So accountability, right? You can tell when the approvals were done. You have that naturally built into your workflow and your messaging system. I'm not saying you need to replace your ticketing system. What I'm saying is you can augment your existing ticket system very, very easily. If it was able to prioritize and open change tickets and give a run book to the ops engineer, they don't have to spend the time going to find all the stuff that they get to do every day. They're kind of told, here are the priorities of the day, and the CISO already knows you're doing this. The change management tickets have already been opened. I'd also posit that we need to take a look when we get into enterprise environments. Are there things that are frictions that add a bunch of time? Are there pre-approvals we can do? Have we built a test harness that can help us deploy patches in development, see if there's any hard problems that we need to back out before we push the next approval to go into production? I'll give you a sneak peek at some of the back-end stuff I have here. The SUSE manage. And then we'll have some question and answer time. And how are we doing on time yet? Because I think the question and answer period is a lot of fun for people that, we're doing great. I talk fast. I can slow down a little bit. But let me show you the MLM server and the Rancher server. Let's do this. Private infrastructure. All right. CVE audits, the systems. So I have a few different systems. They're all in need of patches. Some SAP system, again, it's different channel set for that particular distribution. I've got a CentOS in here. I think I had at one point. Yeah, I've got my own local inference running on SUSE AI. So that is, again, a node of infrastructure with the platform above it, but all specialized around GPUs so that you can tag your workloads as needing a GPU. The orchestrator, Kubernetes, will go find those nodes with GPUs and off to the races. So again, reducing friction. So here, in Rancher, I have an actual MLM MCP server deployed. So that's running as a container in a Kubernetes environment. Let's see if I can go to that real quick. Let's do. Rancher Prime is for people who have Kubernetes, usually more than one Kubernetes. So it is the great equalizer. It allows companies who are doing Kubernetes in one hyperscaler or on-prem or on their laptop to be able to unify the same experience, the same deployment. Think like Terraform, but the universal equalizer lets you then move that same infrastructure decisions, those same application rollouts, that same GitOps, CI/CD pipeline to any target. What do we call that? Leverage, right? Leverage. So if I can deploy the same way to any hyperscaler, no offense to any hyperscalers, you best compete, right? You best compete on price. You best compete on available services. Because if I can choose where to deploy it, even on-prem, and have that same DevOps experience, like same, that again is a real reduction in friction, right? I can deploy it anywhere. Okay, so this is Rancher. Built into Rancher, we have we've extended this for agentic capabilities. We added Liz, again, short for lizard. So you can actually kick up a panel here and it follows your context around through your clusters. So you're in a particular cluster, like here's the local cluster. I also have a harvester cluster, so I can do virtual machines as containers. Again, dogs and cats living together, total chaos. It's awesome. Being able to define your VMs as code, your containers as code, your infra as code, and be able to orchestrate all that in a version capture like GitHub and deploy that automatically. Great stuff. So if I had an event, bad ones, which I don't appear to have, I could actually click on those and say, hey, Liz, can you help me contextually figure this out? So let's just go find a pod or something else. Let's go. And let's search for that MCP server. Here's one for Harvester, here's one for MLM. So this is the actual connectivity that is giving all the connections off to and tools for an agent to go talk to my Linux management infrastructure. So I can ask Liz about it. It's running, it's not gonna have too many problems, but again, the context automatically fills in. It's in this particular cluster, the local cluster, it's in the AI agent system namespace, and then here's the actual workload that it's looking to give me information about. So talks all about an action plan, this and that, gives me some actual information. Say I'm a new Kubernetes user or coming up into this orchestrator that is brand new. Now I can talk to my infrastructure, and my infrastructure will help me with the infrastructure. So it's kind of built-in help that is absolutely the context of your job and what you're doing. Very, very cool. And extensible. So say you are buying versus building your own inference. So you can go in and configure this. Again, this is all open source, free like a puppy. Have you ever heard that term? Somebody's got to walk it, somebody's got to feed it, somebody's got to pick up the poo. So in terms of when you go production or you go enterprise with this, you call SUSE and we help you. Oh, the code's broken, we fix it for you. Oh, you need patches? Here they are. There's also, for academia, like how do I get my hands on it? Again, that Rancher desktop. If you've used like Docker desktop, boom. Rancher desktop gives you this experience that you would find in enterprise in academic situations on my laptop while I haven't even graduated and entered the workforce yet. So we're trying to prime that pump to give universal access, right? So people have the experience that they're going to find when they go into a big customer or a big enterprise. So local inference, sure, I can do a Llama locally. So if I had a MacBook, I could run a Llama, grab a model, point to it, build these workloads, and again, that inference is all tunable and local. If I have credentials for OpenAI or a OpenAI flavored endpoint like in Azure or something like that, or Gemini or Bedrock, et cetera, et cetera. So you can hook up and bring your own model, right? Again, when somebody else has the on-off switch, Fable, and you're building some solutions, this is why sovereign and private AI, it really makes sense. When you can run GLM 5.2 and figure out why somebody and what people are hacking you in real time, like Hugging Face, that's a big deal, being able to run things locally. Anyway, sovereign AI, talk to us at the SUSE booth about it. It's a big deal, and I think it's becoming a bigger deal. If you don't think so, you might want to have another think. There's a lot of stuff going on that is critically important for us to understand how things are changing. All right, so infrastructure you can talk to. Let's hop back over and make sure I've gotten to all the crunchy parts on the slides, but I'd love to, again, kind of ask you where you're at in your journey. All right, so those are the components we stitched together, not super elegantly, showing time compression, of course, right? All right, again, some good takeaways for everybody here. right? Reads are free. In other words, getting the information out, understanding how it affects what you can do to your infrastructure and how you can optimize, the reads are free. Go look this up. Give me information. Help me make sense of it. The writes are gated. And somebody needs to approve. Somebody needs to, hey, we're making a change, open a change ticket. Add that to my process of how my business flows. And if all of this scary business process and slowing down is, news to you, whether you're going to school here or creating a startup, these kind of frictions are worth thinking about. Back to that book, The Road Less Stupid. Honestly, a great book. What to think about. Lastly, the humans are the ones that are approving, okay? That gated piece about writing, yes, it's a decision, but who's going to click the button before it happens? That would be us. Next, some things that might not be obvious, that read and write asymmetry. It's a completely different story. Oh, reading? A-okay. Writing? Let's talk about that. Demo mode caches. In other words, how do you build a harness around your whole process to be able to test it? So cool that I have, unlimited reads and gated writes and approvals, but how do I test it so I'm rolling out a patch? Oh, an update to an application, changing out a model. You might want to build a test harness so you can validate that, especially as, hey, there's a new model, let's strap it in. Do you think your workflows might be affected? They might. A lot of people freaked out when their online girlfriends and boyfriends went away. ChatGPT, was it the 4.0 model, 3.0 model? Anyway, they were deprecating it, and there was a huge outrage because it was different, right? The personality change. So all of these things should point at, yes, improvement, yes, better model, yes, it's going towards the trust me bro benchmarks, right? It's the bell curve, right? Maybe you are an edge case, right? You want dependability, you want, deterministic results. I would posit that if you want determinism, then organize your data for lookups. This question, here's this answer, determinism. Or talk to me about this type of answer, oh, that's the greatest idea ever. You're the best, thanks. Perfect question I like to ask when I'm chatting with an AI that tells me I'm the smartest person in the world. I ask what I'm missing. So as far as prompt foo goes, a little thing that we might want to continue to do is, hey, here's my idea, blah, 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 blah. Here, agent, do this. And by the way, what am I missing? What's a hidden, gotcha that's going to cause me disruption to my budget? I didn't plan for that. Second and third order consequences. This might be all, again, very well known in this audience, but I assure you we need to help others. I could tell you all about the Uber ride this morning. Boy, is that guy on fire after we had a conversation for 10 minutes about what you can do to build your own software. I think I saved an Uber driver this morning. It was great. So demo mode caches, being able to build up harnesses, being able to test the results, get determinism where you need it, and get obvious help via text or other, again, generative results. Okay, local inference. Again, the privacy piece, the sovereign AI, it's a huge deal in Europe right now, Canada right now, sovereign, being able to say, this is in country, this is in data center, this is in rack. Define your boundaries and keep it there. Air gapping, other things. So having local inference, my view of the future is that GPUs are the new mainframe. A lot of you are not old enough to remember mainframes and how software was built in the business for the business. But I do think that that's where it's going, especially when you have people that come get all your tokens from me. Being able to actually control the GPU cluster, being able to schedule jobs on it, being able to build things with less tech debt than the last go-around of mainframes. All that COBOL code and Fortran that nobody understands anymore because Bob wrote it. Didn't Bob retire 20 years ago? Yes, he did. And it's mission critical and nobody understands it, so we ain't touching it. Now AI can read all of that and go, oh, COBOL, you mean from this book, from this schema, from this language definition? Yeah, AI's got you. So now I posit that businesses will be able to create more software on their data inside their firewalls, helping optimize their business and getting rid of their crunchy frictions with a little bit less tech debt. Because even if Bob, who isn't retiring for another decade, the new Bob, it won't matter as much because AI knows these schemas, knows this code base, and the token windows, and the capabilities. What do you think it's going to look like in 2 years? So I would say that that's the next thing, being able, whether you're buying it or building it, or you have a private VPC and some handshakes around, data, that's all fine. But this is what's going to happen. We're going to be able to build our own software for the business, for ourselves, and not have to wait for somebody else's roadmap. So, all right, audit trails in your workflows. I know, wasn't that heavy? All right, I'll do a Jeff drop later. Audit trails in workflows. What does that mean? Make sure that you can see those edges. So as you're building workflows and as you're explaining things to others, so they can visually go, oh, I never realized our process was that crappy. Couple tips. One, I'm from Minnesota, so when somebody says don't eat yellow snow, you better listen. It's not a snow cone. The other tip, never automate a crappy process. Okay? Rebuild that. Be honest with yourselves about the process. Is this crunchy and ishy? Yes, maybe it is worth that effort to rebuild that process. Maybe you can save a lot of time for a lot of people. All right, audit trails in the workflow so you can see them, what's happening. Even latency, if you're going to talk about measuring things. Even applications, AI applications, observability is a big deal. Yay, open source. Anybody open telemetry and things like this? How about OpenLit? OpenLit is an SDK, open source, yay, that has all the instrumentation for all of your vector databases, your inference engines, all of that stuff pre-built. Open source, yay. You can just include OpenLit and then instantiate observability into your actual applications. What did that give you? Tokens in, tokens out, latency, how much time did it take, logs, metrics, all of that, traces. That helps you know, hey, we built this cool app and we're rolling it out, right? Science project. Is it gonna scale? How much concurrency do you need? Did you go from a team of 15 people and it works great? And then you roll out to 50,000 and it sucks, right? Observability is a big deal. And then approvers, not triggers. So I know we talked about triggers starting a process, but you want the humans to be able to approve because ultimately they're responsible. And a lot of your organizations will have governance going, hey, wait a second, especially in light of the news this week, and the news last week. Holy crap, what's the news next week? It'll point to a lot of these things that we need to think about. Again. All right, so what to do? Builders. Remember I said, who's building agents? And everybody was like, yeah. Who's turning it loose on the infrastructure? You can do it safely, okay? So the builders here, DM me, right? DM me on LinkedIn. I'll send you this JSON workflow. You can just go import from file, and you can look at all of it. You can even turn the JSON loose on your favorite coding agent and go, hey, explain this to me like I'm whatever, right? Help me build something similar. Instead of Slack, I want to hook into Teams, or I want to hook into whatever. Like, take this stuff. So builders, build, steal this stuff, right? Steal this book. Remember that? I didn't do it, honestly. Founders, people who are here going to start something. The audit trail is the big deal. The visibility, seeing how it is, seeing how long it takes, where it stops, what approvals it needs. That whole audit trail, that's the real magic, okay? The audit trail itself, not the other fluffy stuff, okay? And then everybody else, interview. Meaning if you're gonna go get a job during the interview, ask these questions, manage up, as they say, but ask this of the interviewer. How about your operations, your organizations? What does your approvals look like? What about your workflows? Blah, blah, blah. These are all good questions to answer back in an interview. The other thing, talking to a lot of students. Some of them are looking for, hey, how do I break into this? You know, wow, I'm a CS student, you know, computer science. I'm gonna be a junior next year. I have to pick my major. What should I do? In light of all the things that are happening, I would posit that people wanting to get into the job market have a portfolio. Just like, anybody, friends that are graphic artists, the big zipper thing, the portfolio. Oh, look at all my sketches, right? Bring your own sketchbook. So create your software for you. Think about software that you would build if you were going to get the job. What would you optimize around? Build your own portfolio. We can call it a repo, a Git repo, but put things together so that as you're going in as a newly graduated student to get a job in this world, I don't believe AI is going to displace all jobs. It certainly won't displace that job if that person has AI skills that accelerate them. So you're not just hiring me, you're hiring me and my 5 agents in my portfolio that make your business go faster. These are differentiators, right? So think about building a portfolio, sketches, software I've built, things I've thought about in business that need help. This is going to be absolutely more valuable to employers, and it will differentiate you if you're going that route. All right. Sovereignty for SUSE. It is not a compliance word. Sounds like it, but sovereign, right? King, queen of their landscape. Sovereignty, having your arms around your entire infrastructure, being able to control its destiny. Again, keeping it out of the hands of somebody else's on-off switch. These are big deals. Things that you should be thinking about since April 27th or whatever is when the mythos moment, right? The moments. So local weights, being able to run it locally on an open platform without vendor lock-in. I can swap in this, I want to use this, and yay, open source. And having an enterprise type company like SUSE there to help you when it gets ishy. But it's all about being under your control. All right, so SUSE's got that whole stack, from Linux, right, to the container runtimes, to like the actual management of Kubernetes, to AI infrastructure, infrastructure for AI, AI for infrastructure, crazy both paths. That's a really solid story. This is why we're seeing a lot of traction and interest in our solutions. Come by the booth, we can talk about that and how easy it is to get started. Again, it's all based on open source software. So that means you can get your hands on it right now and see if it's a fit, right? So businesses who are starting off, how can I do enterprise-leaning infrastructure? If I want to build out a team to support all this infrastructure, I can do that, open source, good luck, right? Or I can get SUSE to come alongside of us and help us. And so we have that throat to choke. We have that handshake. We have those SLAs for tickets and all that other stuff. That's the value that we're bringing. So with that, it's Q&A time. So that's a QR code. Hopefully it works. But that's my LinkedIn. If you guys want to get this JSON workflow, and actually I have a build guide, just markdown file that tells you, here, do this, here's, as soon as you can get N8N running, guess what? There are tons of YouTubes on how to get that running on any container environment. So don't let that be a hurdle for you. Don't worry, that French guy, Claude's got your back, right? Help you get N8N running. But these are great things to show your business or your enterprise or your new startup how to actually visualize what the workflow is. You just got to do a bit of navel gazing, right? Look at your own business, look at your own workflows, figure out where the frictions are. They're at those edges of those nodes. So I'm not a paid sponsor for N8N. Did that flicker up there too? I should be careful here. I just think it's a great tool, again, to show people who need to see something visually, how a workflow goes, et cetera, et cetera. Questions and answers. I've got what I'm going to do, I think they're streaming this. So what I want to do is I'm going to have Stacy run this back to you so that I can hear, or you want to do it? Oh, you're already queued up. Look at you go. Hello.
Hello. Thank you, Jeff.
Of course. Push up.
Okay.
Got it.
So I have 2 questions for you. First question is, you give the example about the live patch.
Yes.
I want to understand that more scenarios that it will work. For example, what scenarios do you think that this agentic AI will be best option for it?
Yeah.
And how it can solve the real enterprise problems? My second question is that I noticed that you use the local agentic AI deployment. So I want to understand more about infrastructure, if you can share more about it. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, and I will cover as much as I can in both of those. And then I want to just kind of do a time check. How much time do I have? Okay, I have no shortage of words. I just want to be nice to you. So let's talk first about live patching, okay? I'll give a little bit of technical grit to it, like here's how it works. But the idea is that in a Linux operating system, the kernel and all of the functions that get written, all of the drivers, all of the bits and bobs that make up the Linux operating system, there is a 2-byte or 4-byte header that's blank. It is put there at the beginning of all these functions with a big hole where you can put a detour sign in. Okay, non-technical explanation, but a little place so that through a process called rep pollining, you can actually install a package like RPM, like you're installing the new kernel. But in order for it to take effect normally, you would have to reboot, so it reloads all of those modules and all those fixes, right? With this detour sign and the act of rep pollining, which is kind of like a trampoline, it just puts in a little, I know I better stop it, getting too excited. It puts in a little detour sign. The next call to that function is going to hit the detour sign and go over to a new memory space where the new function has been put in place, live, without restarting. So any services that depend on that particular library or that function, they'll go and like, I need to do blah, 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 K-write or whatever. Hits that detour sign, goes over to the new one, and it processes in a patched way without actually having to reboot. Why does that make sense in the enterprise? Let me give you an example like SAP, okay? Big enterprise software. Typically when people are putting in SAP for their business is in SAP. Even on the weekend, well, we can't turn it off. We can't reboot. We're running the books on the weekend. We're running payroll. We're running blah, 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 whatever, all of the modules that are SAP, right? Yeah, they've got it in there, yeah, right? German company, I know how to speak German, right? Yeah. The reason that's important is if you can't reboot your business because it takes the business down, right? What SUSE has done around live patching is say, hey, we got you for up to a year. And in most cases, people are doing their annual drills or something, they're planning for an outage. And if they can't bring the business down, SAP in this case, or other mission critical services, patching them is a great option. What about those live patches that don't exist for a process or something that isn't qualified for live patching? Not everything gets live patches, by the way. In that case, we have, again, that package repository, MLM, things like that. In SUSE, I'll just speak about SUSE operating systems, we have ButterFS or BTRFS. It is a snapshot-based or an overlay file system. So anytime you're installing anything, it takes a snapshot, an overlay snapshot of the whole thing, and does one afterward. So snapshot before, install stuff, going all over the file system, and then a snapshot afterwards. Even for people developing applications, they can get a real inventory of, here's the packages we installed, and you can see all the changes across the operating system, so you can roll them back. So we got that covered. What about those things, oh, I installed a library that was a dependency of another library, patch your kernel once or twice, that's Linux, right? And everybody, yeah. Sorry, we'll talk about the supervillains later, but the idea here is that all of these components mixed together, Zypper is our package manager. If you install packages that had a dependency, you can go Zypper ps-s. What does that do? It shows you all the services that have had modified files. So instead of rebooting, you might not need a reboot, but you'll be able to restart those services that were dependencies. And you can do that in an orchestrated fashion too, right? See step one, automation, infrastructure you can talk to. So you can get some really cool workflows and use cases and automation and approvals all with that. All right, so that was pretty good for question one, right? Question two was, again, your second part. Local deployments. Okay, the infrastructure, and what does it look like? So SUSE has all of the components. When I'm running it locally, I have SUSE Linux Enterprise. It takes care of all of the GPU drivers at the operating system level. So, hey, it handles all that NVIDIA crap. And let me tell you, there's like, how do you get the CUDA versions? How do you get the kernel versions? Like, all of that stuff, you know, it can be painful. We have an easy button for that. So the OS handles that deployment. Then we go up a level. We put in a platform, Kubernetes, right? This is for orchestration of workload deployments, containers, right? We have methods to automate that deployment as well. As part of SUSE AI Factory, it's the OS, it's that Kubernetes platform, it's Rancher as a management interface, it's all of that agentic stuff that we built in, Liz and everything else, and the components for NVIDIA's NVAE enterprise embedded into SUSE AI Factory, so you can get the components to build applications yourself. Here's what I would recommend for people who want to build applications around AI. Get a better base container. If you have people that are, I just threw up a version of Alpine and blah, 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 go look at how many CVEs are in the latest version of Alpine. You'll be disappointed. SUSE has a whole come get free base container image, like free to redeploy, whether that's Node.js or Python or whatever language you're coding in, you can get clean, up-to-date base container images that you can reuse. We just want you to start from a solid foundation, right? We take security all the way seriously. Plus, we have a private registry based on Harbor, right, that we provide actual enterprise support on. Plus, we have an application catalog that gives you all the CISO information, all of like, you know, again, the bill of materials, secure bill of materials, SALSA, you know, all of the DX format, like all the stuff that the CISO needs to say, yes, we are compliant, here's our rough and shiny edges. All of that stuff is built in. So yeah, it's a full ecosystem that can run entirely air-gapped, right? Deployed air-gapped. All of this integration, whether it's edge to data center, we have all of the different variation themes. So K3S, anybody use that? It's a single Kubernetes binary that's like this big, less than a gig, runs on Raspberry Pis even. So all of this infrastructure, we build Kubernetes, we manage all of it. We build Linux, we manage all of it. Yes, even Red Hats. You can come get support through one place. You can manage patching across all 212 variations of Linux distributions you'll find in the enterprise, across all the architectures, like all the it's bananas. It's there to help you guys unify and optimize whatever organization you're in, right? Simplify things, get rid of vendor lock-in, give you a new alternative for virtualization other than, sorry, Broadcom. Broadcom is killing enterprise customers right now. So we have SUSE virtualization. What is that? Same footprint in the architecture. Linux, Kubernetes. Oh, now KVM exposed through libvirt into KubeVirt into Kubernetes. And now you can orchestrate VM deployments just like you would application deployments and containerization. Inception, right? The architecture. How is that? And it's free like a puppy. So if you want to know where to get your hands on this stuff to build it up and then go convince the enterprise, holy crap, do I have a better enterprise architecture for us to look at? Then you can get support on it. And yay. Thank you for the questions. Who else?
One of the problems I have is everyone talks about Kubernetes. I'm on Slurm. Does this work with Slurm?
HPC, yeah.
Yeah, the HPC world is not Kubernetes based.
Yeah, that's right. Good thing that we have SLES for HPC, right? So we do have things. In fact, a good friend of mine in Minnesota, everybody's heard of Cray, right? So yeah, my buddy Mitch and I talk about Slurm and some of the automation, the pieces for that infrastructure. It can still play as a constituent. And we do have a specific build of SUSE Linux Enterprise Server that is specifically around HPC, has support for Slurm and some other frameworks for deployment and management at that level. If you would like, let's talk later. And yeah, we can just have good conversations. Was there anything crunchy and hard that You know, I know you don't use Kubernetes yet, but there are some frameworks and some similarities that still, it's all about being able to deploy the application or the long-running workload and manage it. So we have solutions there too. It's a good question. Thank you. Who else? Over here. Awesome.
Hey, Jeff, I really like your idea.
Is it pushed up? Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you so much. I like the idea for the pops up for the patching.
Yeah.
It's a really brilliant idea. I like it. My follow-up question regarding live patching is, you know, in the industry, sometimes, especially in the production environment, there could be a chance that when we do the patching, we blow up the environment and everything is gone, right? That could be possible. If there is some way like a backup or some like a rolling update, for example, you have 1,000 machines, but I rolling update maybe 10 of them. If everything all good, we go another level, go to 1,000 and then go to 2,000.
Yeah.
So I want to learn more about it because live patching is really something I'm really interesting and curious.
Yep. Yeah, it's a, man, it can get complicated. But what I would say is you're really pointing at what kind of test harness and what kind of approval process for actually making sure the patches don't break something, right? There's a lot of people like, I'm not patching or I'm not rebooting or I'm not doing anything because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Everybody heard that, right? Right now, I would say it's not an option. It's not an, hey, we'll opt into patches. You're going to have to work very diligently with your application owners because none of this stuff would exist at all without the application making it so. In other words, why would I deploy a server? Why would I deploy all this infrastructure if there wasn't some driving consumptive need? The app. It's all about the app. You have no choice. You must work with your application teams. You must work with the business to understand that patching is a priority. It's no longer an opt-in thing. We won't survive that, right? So most of those people, if you want to give them an analogy and how to like get them over this, you build a test harness. You build something that can rapidly test those patches against a replica of your environment. Blue, green, and all this other stuff as we move into containers of the world by which every software is built, right? Blue-green deployments, being able to think of the nodes themselves as ephemeral as well as the workloads, being able to set up infrastructure that has session and state management so that, yes, that node, not only did that application restart as a container, but the whole node underneath it had a reboot. That's all right. The workload moved over there. Session state was saved. So you're going to have to think about architecting your applications to be able to survive this. If you want an example of what it looks like, pull out your phone and go to the App Store. You know the little one that has a red number on it this morning, even though you updated last night? That's the mindset. Like, the applications need to get these updates. It needs to be frictionless there as well. I'm not going to say that that isn't work. It is. But that's the right thing to be having conversations about. How do we make sure we can patch in a 4-hour window? If you can't, you need to try harder, okay? So then prioritization, yes, how can I do that? If I can't effectively get it out to everything in 4 hours, I need to get the most important stuff out in 4 hours. How do I prioritize? And that was how I posited, look at these other publicly available sources that help you, oh, that one's actually being exploited. It's only a 6.5 CVSS score, but it's being exploited everywhere. And I have 10 hosts that I can identify immediately that need that patch, right? This is the infrastructure I can talk to kind of benefit. I can see the nodes. I can search for a CVE. I can search for all of this other stuff to see what my real absolute vulnerability score is for my organization. So you'll have to do some internal audits. The other part, live patching, yes. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. Several tools to get it done, okay? Come talk to me later. We'll talk all about any of the things that I didn't answer, because I shotgun a lot. What else? Anyone else? I'm really not that scary. Could switch in and talk about music instead, you know. All right. I think I will give the gift of time back. I think we did pretty well, right? I really appreciate the questions, really appreciate the attention. I know it's really hard, you know, when people have somebody that's not a dynamic speaker. Every time I jump around up here, things disconnect. So I had to really tone it down. But if you want to come talk to us more about, you know, how to benefit from these open solutions, right? The stuff that doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg, gives you the position to be able to think broader about the problems. I love talking to people, right? So come see me. Come see us, right? Thanks, Stacy. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time today.